when repotting any orchid, but phalaenopsis, we were talking about phalaenopsis tonight, so when we're talking about phalaenopsis, couple different things you want to keep in mind. The choice of the media is personal. I do not, if you've heard my talks before, I do not tell you that you have to use X media to pot your cattleyas and X media to pot your Phalaenopsis. Because everybody's watering habits are different, everybody's conditions are different, some people dry out faster than others, okay? So, if you are growing in a covered area where you control 100% of the water, and you are mindful of how you're watering, then moss might be a good idea, okay? It stays damp but not soaking wet as long as you don't water it every day for a long period of time. And Phalaenopsis, almost all of them want the roots moist for a prolonged period. They do not want to dry out completely, okay? So moss, in that environment, moss works well. If you're what I call a therapeutic waterer, and you like to water your plants every morning because it makes you feel good, moss is probably not going to be a good idea, okay? So the point I'm making here is, depending on how you water and your conditions, and if you're growing outdoors where it's going to get rained on every day in the summertime, moss is not going to be a good idea either in a pot, okay? So as long as you meet the requirements of the plant for the watering, for the hydration, then it really doesn't matter what media you use. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay, all right. So with that said, we have a Phalaenopsis that's pretty much ready to go up in size. I'm using moss, that's what I like to use. You can use bark mix, you can use several different things. You can mount them, okay? If you're gonna mount them upside down like this. In nature, this is how they grow. You'll see a couple photos, allows the water to run off the leaf very quickly, okay? So it doesn't settle in the crown. That's usually one of the fastest ways people kill their Phalaenopsis is they water them and they leave them with water sitting in the crown, or they water them in the container that they bought them at the Home Depot store for, which has no drainage, and they sit and they drown, okay? All right, so when you're repotting, I like to wet my moist ahead of time. It's damp but not soaking wet, okay? I'm just gonna empty out. Always best whenever you're repotting a plant to water it about 10 to 20 minutes ahead of time. That allows the roots to hydrate well and it makes them more pliable. You're still gonna damage roots, but you'll have a lot less damage when you do so, okay? If you have one that's very badly root bound like this, or nicely root bound, depending on your point of view, then I like, if you can squeeze the pot, if it's a plastic pot, just squeeze it gently all the way around, and it usually helps it come out a little bit easier. Usually. All right, keep your label. Then you want to take all the old potting material off. Why do you want to do that? Because as the potting media breaks down, it loses the ability to hold air, oxygen, and the roots need oxygen to breathe. But also, as they break down, they're being broken down by fungi and bacteria, and that can affect your plant and cause root rot, okay? So you want to take all the old media off, and again, hydrating the plant ahead of time helps with that process, okay? So, you want to take all of these off. This particular plant in the pot that I have it in is sort of a dead giveaway that it came from Taiwan. The Taiwanese and the Koreans, in general, like to pot their Phalaenopsis with the moss packed very, very tight. I do not recommend potting like that, okay? Because when you compress a potting media like that, you push air out of the media, and as we said a while ago, the roots need air to breathe, okay? And if you're used to watering your Phalaenopsis once a week or a couple times a week, this potting method with the moss really heavily compacted is going to cause problems, because this way, how they potted it, they only water once every 2 to 3 weeks, okay? So you have to get used to that. But not how I recommend doing it. Take as much of the media off as you can. Some people will get a hose with a water breaker on there and just wash all the media off also. That way you get all of it off. That's fine. Okay, pretty much all of it is off. Two things with the pot. One, you want to match the pot to your root system, and to a lesser extent the size of the foliage. If you don't have many roots on the plant, this is really nice. If you don't have many roots on the plant, you may want to stay in the same size pot that you were in before, or even if the plant's in trouble, go down a size so that the roots don't stay too wet. Overpotting the plant creates more water in around the roots, and that can create rot faster, okay? So that's a nice there. A couple of them are a little bit on the long side. If you have way too many roots, I do not go up in size anything on a Phalaenopsis larger than a 6-inch pot unless I have a really massive plant, okay? Pots larger than that tend to hold just way too much moisture, I find, in the center, and then I have root issues after a year. So, if you have too many roots, just prune them, okay? That's my favorite part of the whole presentation. All right, so I don't have any yellow leaves, and we want all the roots now in the potting media, okay? You don't want any roots sticking up out of it. If you have older plants and you have a really long old stem that's all the way down here with dead roots on there, just break the stem off just below where all your new roots are, okay? Take that old stem off, don't leave it, right? If you have older leaves that have new roots growing above the older leaves, as long as you have 2 or 3 pairs of leaves above those older leaves, you can pinch those leaves off so you can get those roots in the media. That's fine also, okay? So then I have my moss. I'm right-handed, so with my left hand, the base of the plant goes between my thumb and forefinger, okay? Very easy. My moss is very loose. Put a little bit underneath the plant like that. That keeps the roots on the inside hydrated. And then you're just going to take, look again, nice and loose. You go on one side of the root ball like that. Switch hands. I've done this a few times. On the other side of the root moss like this. Okay. And then you just gently, you can even put a little bit of moss on the bottom if there's nothing there. Gently stick it in the pot like that.
Very easy.
Okay. Cover the top of your roots. Now, I'll admit I forgot to bring the stuff that I normally use for the potting demo, so I had to buy a pot and potting media yesterday. The pots that I use are normally, they normally have this interior rim like this one does. And whenever I pot, whether it's a Phalaenopsis or a Cattleya, my potting media only comes up to that interior rim. It does not go above it. I do it for 2 reasons, and especially on a Phalaenopsis, and so you'll see I've left about 1 inch of space there. 1, it holds the lower leaves off the moss, so you don't have the moss touching your lower leaves. And then 2, if you've ever made the mistake of letting your Phalaenopsis get too dry, if it's in moss and you try to rehydrate it, moss gets very difficult to re-wet once it's wet, okay? But when you're watering, what this extra little gap gives you is it provides a little bit of a reservoir, so when you water, you can fill that up with water, and it allows the water to slowly trickle into the moss. If you pot with the moss all the way to the top, when you water it, a lot of the water just runs right off, and it's difficult to wet, okay? So it serves 2 purposes for me. All right, so you notice I haven't compacted it highly, just a little bit of compression, but it's enough that the plant stays in there, okay? Not going anywhere. Good to go. Put your label back in, oops, and you're done. Okay? All right, that's a potting demo. All right. I need you